The biting winter wind whipped against Della Rollins' face as she stumbled forward through knee-deep snow, the angry shouts from Fort Worth fading behind her. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek where Sheriff Harmon's ring had caught her during the mock trial they'd held in the saloon. She had nowhere to go, no family left, and a town full of people who believed she was a witch responsible for the cattle disease that had devastated their herds. Della could barely feel her feet anymore, her thin boots soaked through, and her dress offering little protection against the unusually harsh Texas winter of 1875. The tears that had streamed down her face earlier now felt like ice crystals on her skin. 22 years old, and she was going to die alone in this God-forsaken snowstorm, all because she tried to help sick animals with the herbal remedies her grandmother had taught her. "They're fools, the lot of them," she whispered through cracked lips, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The snow was getting deeper, and Fort Worth was at least 2 miles behind her now. Ahead lay nothing but open country, blanketed in white as far as she could see. When her legs finally gave out, Della collapsed into the snow. She'd been walking for hours, fleeing the torches and accusations. The cold was seeping into her bones now, a dangerous warmth beginning to spread through her limbs. She knew enough about winter deaths to recognize what was happening. She was freezing to death. "Madam? Hey there, madam." The voice seemed distant, dreamlike. Della forced her heavy eyelids open, convinced she was hallucinating. Through the swirling snow, a silhouette appeared on horseback, growing larger as it approached. "Good Lord," the voice said, closer now. "What in tarnation are you doing out here?" A man dismounted, his face coming into focus as he crouched beside her. Clear blue eyes assessed her with concern beneath the brim of a worn Stetson. His face was weathered but kind, stubble darkening his jaw. They drove me out," Della managed, her teeth chattering violently. "Said I brought the sickness." "Fort Worth?" he asked, and she nodded weakly. Without hesitation, the man removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Name's Wade Irwin," he said, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Got a ranch about 4 miles from here. They won't find you there." Della wanted to protest, to tell him they would come looking, that he'd be in danger too. But the warmth of his coat and the solid strength of his arms made speech impossible. The last thing she remembered before darkness claimed her was being lifted onto his horse, his voice reassuring her as he mounted behind her. "You're safe now, miss. I promise you that." When Della awoke, she was wrapped in thick blankets before a roaring fireplace. For a moment, she couldn't remember how she'd gotten there. Then the memory of being driven from town rushed back. She tried to sit up, panic rising in her chest. "Easy there," said a deep voice. Wade Irwin sat in a chair nearby, whittling a small piece of wood. "You've been out for nearly 6 hours. The cabin was simple but well built. A sturdy table with 4 chairs stood near a small kitchen area. Bookshelves lined one wall, surprisingly full for a ranch house in the middle of nowhere. "Why did you help me?" Della asked, her voice hoarse. Wade set down his whittling and poured a cup of water from a pitcher. "Couldn't leave you to freeze, could I?" He brought her the water. "Besides, I know Fort Worth. Not the first time they've run someone out on ridiculous charges." Della sipped the water gratefully. "They said I'm a witch. That I caused the cattle disease," Wade snorted. "That disease has been moving through Texas for months, started way down south, nothing to do with you." He studied her face. "What's your name?" "Della Rollins." "Well, Miss Rollins, you're welcome to stay here until this blows over." "It won't blow over," she said, looking down at her bandaged hands. Someone Wade had treated her frostbite. "Sheriff Harmon's prize bull died yesterday. He needs someone to blame." Wade's expression hardened. "Franklin Harmon always was a bully with a badge." He stood up and moved to stir something in a pot hanging over the fire. You hungry? Made some stew." The aroma hit Della then, rich and savory, making her stomach growl audibly. She hadn't eaten since early morning before they'd dragged her from her small house on the edge of town. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I don't want to bring trouble to your door. They might come looking." Wade ladled stew into a bowl. "My ranch is far enough away that they won't connect you to me. Besides," he added with a slight smile as he handed her the food, "not many folks from town venture out this way. They think I'm a bit of a hermit." "Are you?" Della asked, taking the bowl. "Just prefer my own company most days." He sat back down with his own portion. "And that of my horses. Got 17 of them. Breed and train them for sale." As she ate, Della studied her rescuer more carefully. Wade Irwin was perhaps 30, with sun-darkened skin and those remarkable blue eyes. His hands were calloused but gentle, and despite his claim of preferring solitude, there was nothing unfriendly about him. "How long have you lived out here?" she asked. "Going on 8 years now." He seemed pleased by her interest. "Came west after the war, didn't much care for Virginia anymore." "You fought for the Confederacy," a shadow crossed his face. "Not by choice, but yes, learned a lot about what matters and what doesn't." He cleared his throat. "What about you? Been in Fort Worth long, 3 years, Della replied. "Came with my grandmother after my parents died of typhoid in Missouri. She was a healer, taught me about plants and medicines." She paused, the grief still fresh. "She died last spring. I've been managing on my own since then." "A healer," Wade nodded. "So that's why they decided you were a witch." "I tried to help," Della said bitterly. "When the cattle started getting sick, I offered remedies that might ease their suffering, but when they kept dying, well, people need something to blame." They ate in silence for a while. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the cabin. "Storm's getting worse," Wade observed. "Good thing I found you when I did." Della looked up at him. "Why were you out in it?" "Had to check on some of the herd. Got a few pregnant mares that needed seeing to." He set his empty bowl aside. "Lucky for both of us, I took the northern route back." "Thank you," Della said again, meaning it deeply. "I don't know how to repay you." Wade waved off her thanks. "No need, get some rest. We'll figure things out in the morning." That night, Della slept better than she had in months despite her circumstances. The security of the cabin and Wade's protective presence nearby gave her a peace she hadn't expected to find again. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving a pristine white landscape outside the windows. Della woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Wade moving about the cabin. "Morning," he said when he noticed her stirring. Feeling any better, she sat up, taking stock. Her hands and feet tingled but weren't as painful as they might have been thanks to his care. "Much better, thank you. Good, got some clothes that might fit you." He gestured to a pile on the chair. "They belonged to my sister when she visited last summer. Should be warmer than what you were wearing." Della glanced down at the nightshirt she was wearing, then back at Wade with a question in her eyes. He reddened slightly. "Mrs. Cotter from the next ranch over came by last night after you fell asleep. She helped get you changed and checked you over. Said you'd be fine with rest." Relieved and touched by his consideration, Della thanked him again. After breakfast, Wade showed her around his property. The Circle I Ranch wasn't large compared to some, but it was impressive nonetheless. A sturdy barn housed the horses, each one magnificent. Wade clearly took great pride in his animals, speaking of each by name and detailing their lineages. "This is Tempest," he said, introducing a stunning black mare. "Best horse I've ever bred. Her foal is due in about a month." Della approached cautiously, extending her hand. The mare sniffed it, then nudged her gently. "She likes you," Wade said, sounding pleased. "Most folks she won't let near." "She's beautiful," Della murmured, stroking the horse's sleek neck. "They all are." Wade watched her with the horses, his expression softening. "You've got away with them." "Animals are often kinder than people," she replied, thinking of the angry faces back in Fort Worth. Over the following days, a routine developed. Wade would tend to the ranch work while Della helped around the cabin. She discovered his modest library contained medical books and texts on botany, which she devoured eagerly. When he learned of her interest, Wade seemed pleased, showing her his small garden where he grew herbs for the horses. "Most of these survived the snow under these coverings," he explained, lifting a tarp to reveal green plants beneath. "I use them for poultices when the horses get injured." "My grandmother would have approved," Della said, smiling at the careful way he had arranged the garden. A week passed, then two. January gave way to February, and while the snow melted somewhat, the cold remained. Wade rode into a different town, Cooperville, for supplies once, returning with fabric and other items for Della. "Thought you might want to make yourself some clothes," he said gruffly, seeming embarrassed by his thoughtfulness. "Can't keep wearing Martha's things forever." Della was touched by the gesture. "You've done so much for me already." "It's nothing," he insisted, though his ears reddened. "Besides, it's nice having someone to talk to besides the horses." They grew more comfortable with each other as the days passed. Della learned that Wade had lost his parents young, raised primarily by his older sister Martha, who now lived in San Antonio with her husband. He'd fought in the war reluctantly, deserted near the end, and made his way west to start fresh. The horses had been his salvation, giving him purpose when nightmares of battle still haunted him. In turn, Della shared stories of her childhood in Missouri, her grandmother's wisdom, and her dreams of someday having her own proper healing practice. She didn't speak much about Fort Worth, though the memory of her expulsion still burned. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Wade broke a comfortable silence. "I rode close to Fort Worth yesterday." Della tensed. "Did anyone see you?" "No, kept my distance." "But I heard talk in a roadside tavern." He hesitated. "The cattle disease is worse. Half the herds are gone now." "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, meaning it despite everything. "Those poor animals." "They're still looking for you," Wade continued. "Harmon's convinced you cursed the town before you left." Della laughed bitterly. "Of course he is. Easier than accepting that disease is just part of life." Wade leaned forward, his expression serious. "Della, I think you should stay here, at least until spring. It's not safe for you to leave." Their eyes met across the small space, and something shifted between them. Until that moment, they'd both pretended her stay was temporary, that soon she would move on. Now, Wade was asking her to stay, and Della realized she wanted to. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "Never been more sure of anything," he replied, his voice low. That night, Della lay awake long after Wade had retired to his bedroll on the floor. He'd insisted she take the bed from the first night. Something was growing between them, a connection, a understanding that went beyond gratitude or convenience. She wondered if he felt it too, this gentle warmth that spread through her chest when their hands accidentally touched, or when she caught him watching her with that soft expression he tried to hide. February brought slightly warmer days, though the nights remained cold. Wade taught Della to ride, starting with his gentlest mare, a dappled gray named Willow. Della proved to be a quick study, her initial fear giving way to exhilaration as she gained confidence. "You're a natural," Wade called as she completed a circuit of the corral without incident. Della couldn't help but laugh, the first genuine laugh since before that terrible day in Fort Worth. "I had a good teacher." Wade's answering smile made her heart skip. More and more, she found herself seeking those smiles, finding excuses to be near him as he worked. One afternoon, while checking on Tempest, Della noticed the mare seemed distressed, pawing at the ground and breathing heavily. "Wade," she called, hurrying to the barn door. "Something's wrong with Tempest." He came running from the corral, face alarmed. Inside the stable, he quickly assessed the situation. "She's early. The foal's coming now." For the next several hours, they worked together to help the laboring mare. Wade's expertise guided them, but it was Della's gentle touch and calming voice that seemed to reassure Tempest the most. When the foal finally emerged, a spindly-legged colt with a white star on his forehead, both were exhausted but elated. "He's perfect," Della whispered as the newborn wobbled to stand. Wade wasn't looking at the colt, though. He was watching Della, his expression unguarded for once. "Yes, perfect." When their eyes met, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feeling. Wade stepped closer, one hand rising to gently brush a strand of hair from Della's cheek. "You have hay in your hair," he murmured, but his hand lingered. "Wade," she breathed, her heart racing. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Then Tempest nickered softly, drawing their attention back to mother and foal. The spell broken, Wade stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should let them rest." Outside, the tension between them remained, though neither acknowledged it. That evening, dinner was a quieter affair than usual, both lost in their thoughts. It was Wade who finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking," he said, setting down his fork. "The south pasture needs clearing before spring planting. It's too much work for one person." Della waited, sensing there was more to his statement. "What I mean is," he continued, looking everywhere but at her, "I could use help around here. Permanent help." Della's breath caught. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Irwin?" His eyes finally met hers, serious and vulnerable. "I'm offering you a place, Miss Rollins. Here with me, if you want it." The true meaning behind his words hung in the air between them. This wasn't just about work or shelter. This was about something more. "I think I would like that very much," Della replied softly. Wade's smile began slowly, then spread across his face. "Well then," he said, "I guess that's settled." That night, neither could sleep. Della lay in bed listening to Wade's restless movements on his bedroll. Finally, she heard him rise and move to the door, stepping outside quietly. After a few minutes, she followed. She found him on the porch, staring up at the stars. The night was clear and cold, the moon casting silver light across the snow-patched landscape. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Wade turned, not seeming surprised to see her. "Too much on my mind." Della moved to stand beside him at the railing. "Me too." They stood in silence, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. When Wade's hand found hers on the railing, Della didn't pull away. His touch was warm, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. "I never expected to find anyone," Wade said quietly. "After the war, I figured I'd live out my days alone with my horses. Thought that was all I deserved." Della turned to face him. "Why would you think that?" In the moonlight, his face was a study in shadows and regret. "I did things during the war, things I can't take back. We all have regrets, Wade." He shook his head. "It's different." Della placed her free hand on his cheek, stopping his words. "The past is gone. It's what we do now that matters." Wade looked down at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Della," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. Della answered by stepping closer, her hands sliding to his shoulders as his arms encircled her waist. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving in the warmth they created together. Later, they sat wrapped in a blanket on the porch swing, talking until the eastern sky began to lighten. Wade spoke of his fears and dreams, and Della shared hers. By the time dawn broke, something new had been forged between them, a bond of trust and understanding that neither had expected to find. The following weeks brought them closer still. Wade began teaching Della about ranch operations, and she impressed him with her quick mind and willingness to work hard. In turn, she expanded his small herb garden, applying her knowledge of medicinal plants to benefit both humans and horses. One evening in early March, Wade returned from checking fence lines to find Della sitting at the table with papers spread before her. "What's all this?" he asked, hanging his hat by the door. She looked up with bright eyes. "I've been thinking about our future. If I'm really staying, then I want to contribute more." The words, "our future," made Wade's heart leap. "What did you have in mind?" Della showed him her sketches and notes. "We could expand the herb garden into a proper medicinal garden. There's a growing demand for reliable remedies, and with your horse breeding business, we could create a name for ourselves. The circle I could be known for both fine horses and quality medicines." Wade studied her plans, impressed by her thoroughness. "You've thought this through." "Is it too much?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "I don't want to overstep." "Overstep?" Wade shook his head, taking her hands in his. "Della, nothing would make me happier than building something together." Relief and happiness spread across her face. "Really?" "Really," he confirmed, then hesitated. "But there's something I need to ask you first." Della waited, curious. Wade took a deep breath. "I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He knelt before her chair, still holding her hands. "Della Rollins, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Della's eyes. "Wade, are you certain? You hardly know me." "I know enough," he said firmly. "I know you're kind and brave. I know you care for animals and people alike. I know that when you smile, the whole world seems brighter." He squeezed her hands. "And I know that I love you." Della's heart soared at his words. "I love you too," she whispered. "Yes, Wade Irwin, I will marry you." The kiss they shared sealed their promise, the beginning of a new chapter neither had imagined possible just months before. Spring arrived in earnest by late March, transforming the landscape. The weather warmed, snow gave way to green, and the ranch came alive with new growth. Wade and Della worked side by side, preparing the south pasture and expanding the garden as planned. They were married on the first day of April, a small ceremony at the Cooperville church with only a few guests. Wade's sister, Martha, and her husband had traveled from San Antonio, and the Cotters from the neighboring ranch attended. The local preacher, who had taken an immediate liking to Della, performed the ceremony with genuine warmth. "Never seen Wade smile so much," Martha whispered to Della during the modest celebration afterward. "You've brought my brother back to life." "He saved me," Della replied, watching as Wade laughed at something Mr. Cotter said. Martha squeezed her hand. "I think you saved each other." That night, returning to the ranch, their home now, truly Wade carried Della across the threshold, both of them giddy with happiness and a touch of nervousness. "Welcome home, Mrs. Irwin," he said, setting her down gently in the cabin that now bore touches of both their personalities. "I like the sound of that," Della replied, reaching up to touch his face. "Thank you for finding me in that snowstorm." "Best thing I ever did," Wade murmured before his lips found hers. Their first night as husband and wife was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and amazed at the depth of their connection. For Della, who had known only loss and rejection in recent years, Wade's loving attention was a revelation. For Wade, who had denied himself happiness for so long, Della's uninhibited affection healed wounds he hadn't realized were still open. As spring blossomed into summer, so did their love and their business. Word spread about the fine horses of Circle I Ranch, and Wade's reputation as a trainer grew. Simultaneously, Della's herbal remedies gained attention, first from neighboring ranches, then from Cooperville, and eventually beyond. The irony wasn't lost on either of them that what had led to Della's expulsion from Fort Worth was now bringing prosperity to their doorstep. People traveled specifically to consult the healer of Circle I Ranch, seeking relief for ailments that conventional medicine couldn't address. Mrs. Irwin, a woman from Cooperville, said after Della had provided a tincture for her child's cough, "You're truly heaven sent. My Tommy slept through the night for the first time in weeks." Such gratitude was common, and Della accepted it graciously, though she never forgot the contrast with her treatment in Fort Worth. By late summer, they had hired 2 ranch hands to help with the expanded operations. The young men, brothers named Thomas and Joseph Miller, proved hardworking and respectful, giving Wade more time to focus on training while they handled routine chores. One August afternoon, Wade returned from Cooperville with news that made Della's blood run cold. "Franklin Harmon was there," he said as they sat on the porch after dinner. "In the general store." Della's hand tightened around her glass. "Did he see you?" "No, I stayed out of sight, but I heard him talking." Wade's expression was grim. "He mentioned that witch woman who cursed Fort Worth. Said he'd heard rumors about a healer near Cooperville who matched your description." Fear, long dormant, resurfaced. "You think he'll come looking?" Wade took her hand firmly in his. "Let him try. You're my wife now, Della. This is our land. No one's going to drive you away again." Despite his reassurance, both were more cautious in the following weeks. Della stayed closer to the ranch, and Wade made sure one of the Miller brothers was always nearby when he had to be away. Their precautions seemed unnecessary as August turned to September with no sign of Harmon. Life continued its pleasant rhythm, and a new joy entered their lives when Della confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks: she was expecting their first child. Wade's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for. His face transformed with wonder, and he lifted her in a gentle embrace that conveyed all the love and excitement words couldn't express. "A baby," he whispered, his hand resting reverently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." They spent that evening making plans, discussing names and changes needed to accommodate their growing family. The small cabin would need expansion, and Wade immediately began sketching ideas for additional rooms. "I want our child to have siblings," Della admitted as they lay in bed that night. "I was so lonely as an only child." Wade kissed her forehead. "As many children as you want," he promised. "This place should be filled with laughter." Their happiness made them less vigilant, perhaps inevitably. So when Sheriff Franklin Harmon and 2 deputies rode onto Circle I property 3 weeks later, they were unprepared. Della was alone in the garden, Wade having ridden out with Thomas to check on a sick horse at the Cotter's ranch. She looked up at the sound of approaching hoofbeats, expecting to see her husband. Instead, she found herself staring into the cold eyes of the man who had driven her into a snowstorm to die. Well, Harmon drawled, dismounting. "If it ain't the witch herself." Della straightened, refusing to show fear. "This is private property, Sheriff. You're not welcome here." Harmon laughed, an ugly sound. "Hear that, boys? The witch thinks she can give orders." He stepped closer. "You're coming back to Fort Worth to answer for what you did to our cattle." "I did nothing to your cattle," Della said firmly. "The disease was natural. It's affected herds all across Texas. Save your lies for the judge." Harmon reached for her arm. "Come along now." Della backed away, one hand protectively covering her stomach. "I will not. My husband will be back any minute, and he won't take kindly to you trespassing." "Husband?" Harmon's eyebrows rose. "Found yourself some fool to marry you, did you? Well, he can visit you in jail." One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably. "Sheriff, maybe we should wait for her husband." "Do this proper like." "Shut up, Jenkins," Harmon snapped. We're taking her now." As Harmon lunged for her again, Della heard Joseph's voice ring out from the direction of the barn. "That's far enough." The young man stood with a rifle aimed steadily at the sheriff. "The lady asked you to leave." Harmon's hand moved to his gun. "Boy, you better put that down before you get hurt." Joseph didn't waver. "Mrs. Irwin is under the protection of Circle I Ranch. You'll wait for Mr. Irwin or you'll leave." The standoff might have ended badly if not for the sound of more riders approaching. Wade and Thomas galloped into the yard, pulling up short at the scene before them. Wade's face darkened with fury when he saw Harmon near Della. "Harmon," he said coldly, dismounting, "you're a long way from Fort Worth." The sheriff turned, recognition dawning. "Irwin, you married this witch." "I married Della Rollins, yes." Wade moved to stand beside his wife. "And you're trespassing on our land." "She's wanted for questioning about the cattle disease," Harmon insisted. "I have the authority. Your authority ends at Fort Worth's boundaries," Wade interrupted. "And even if it didn't, you have no evidence against my wife except superstition and ignorance." Thomas and Joseph had positioned themselves on either side of the couple, rifles ready. The deputies looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Sheriff," one said quietly, "maybe we should go." "Ain't worth getting shot over." Harmon's face flushed with anger. "You haven't heard the last of this, Irwin. That woman, my wife," Wade corrected sharply, "is respected throughout this county for her healing skills. The same skills your town rejected out of fear and stupidity." His hand rested on his holstered pistol. "Now get off my land before I forget my manners." For a tense moment it seemed Harmon might draw, then muttering a curse he backed toward his horse. "This ain't over." "Yes, it is," Wade replied evenly. "Spread the word in Fort Worth. Della Irwin is under my protection. Anyone coming after her will answer to me." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Harmon glared but mounted his horse, motioning his deputies to do the same. "You made a powerful enemy today, Irwin." "Wouldn't be the first time," Wade answered calmly. They watched in silence as the three riders departed. Only when they were out of sight did Wade turn to Della, his face etched with concern. "Are you all right? The baby?" "We're fine," she assured him, though her hands trembled. Joseph arrived just in time. Wade nodded gratefully to the young ranch hand. "Thank you." "Just doing my job, sir," Joseph replied, though he looked pleased by the acknowledgement. That evening, after the excitement had settled, Wade and Della sat before the fire discussing what had happened. "Do you think he'll be back?" Della asked. Wade considered the question seriously. "Not anytime soon. Harmon's a bully, but he's not stupid. He knows he'd be outmatched here. But eventually—" "Eventually," Wade sighed, "he'll either forget about you or find someone else to blame for Fort Worth's troubles." He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "But we'll be ready either way." The incident with Harmon cast a brief shadow, but as autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, life at Circle I returned to its pleasant routine. Della's pregnancy progressed without complication, her body changing to accommodate the growing life within. Wade proved to be an attentive husband, ensuring Della didn't overwork herself while respecting her independence. When her back ached in the evenings, his strong hands would massage away the discomfort. When cravings struck at odd hours, he would ride to Cooperville if necessary to fulfill them. Construction on the cabin expansion began in October. Wade had designed a proper bedroom for them, a nursery, and an additional room that could serve as Della's workspace for preparing her remedies. The Millers helped with the building, as did several men from neighboring ranches who had benefited from Della's medicines. "Never seen a community come together like this," Martha commented during a visit in November. She and her husband had come to stay until after the baby's birth, offering support and companionship. "People are good, mostly," Della replied, watching from the porch as the men raised a wall. They just need a chance to show it. By Christmas, the expanded cabin was complete, transformed into a proper home with room for their growing family. They celebrated the holiday quietly, exchanging simple gifts and enjoying Martha's excellent cooking. Wade's gift to Della was a beautiful cradle he had crafted himself, carved with images of horses and wildflowers. "It's perfect," Della whispered, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Her own gift to him was a handsome leather-bound journal filled with her carefully recorded herbal remedies and horse care techniques. "For our legacy," she explained as he turned the pages admiringly. "Something to pass down to our children." January brought heavy snow again, a reminder of the day they had met 1 year before. On the anniversary of Della's arrival at Circle I, Wade surprised her with a special dinner and a silver locket containing a tiny portrait of them both, painted by an artist in Cooperville. "To remember how it all began," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "As if I could ever forget," Della replied, kissing him softly. "You saved my life that day." Wade shook his head, drawing her close. "You saved mine too, I just didn't know it yet." In the final weeks before their baby's arrival, a peace settled over Circle I Ranch. The expanded business was thriving, with orders for horses and remedies coming from as far away as Kansas City. The Miller brothers had proven so valuable that Wade offered them permanent positions with improved wages, which they eagerly accepted. Word reached them through Martha's husband that Fort Worth had finally acknowledged the cattle disease as a natural phenomenon after veterinarians from Dallas confirmed similar outbreaks throughout the region. Sheriff Harmon, facing criticism for his handling of the situation, had been voted out of office during town elections. "Justice comes in its own time," Wade observed when they heard the news. Della agreed, though privately she felt vindicated. The town that had cast her out as a witch now knew the truth, though too late for amends. Their son arrived on a clear February morning after a night of labor during which Wade never left Della's side. William Wade Irwin entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to his father's eyes. "He's strong," Martha declared as she cleaned and swaddled the infant. "Got his mother's determination and his father's lungs." Holding their son between them, Wade and Della experienced a joy neither had thought possible a year earlier. William's tiny fingers curled around his father's thumb, his eyes already showing hints of Wade's blue blinking in the morning light. "He's perfect," Wade whispered, echoing the words he'd spoken when Tempest's foal was born. "Perfect," Della agreed, exhausted but radiant. Spring came again, bringing new life and new possibilities. William thrived, growing quickly and revealing a sunny disposition that charmed everyone at Circle I. Della gradually resumed her work with herbs, often with William nearby in a basket, watching with curious eyes. On a warm day in May, an unexpected visitor arrived at the ranch. Della was in the garden with William when she heard approaching horses. Looking up, she saw an unfamiliar man riding alongside Wade, who had gone to Cooperville that morning. "Della," Wade called as they approached, "there's someone here to see you." The stranger dismounted, removing his hat respectfully. He was older, perhaps 60, with kind eyes and a dignified manner. "Mrs. Irwin," he said, "my name is Harold Wilcox. I was elected mayor of Fort Worth 3 months ago." Della's surprise must have shown on her face. Wade moved to stand beside her, his presence reassuring. "Mayor Wilcox came to Cooperville specifically to find you," Wade explained. "I thought you might want to hear what he has to say." Curious and cautious, Della nodded for the man to continue. "Mrs. Irwin," Wilcox began, "I've come on behalf of Fort Worth to offer our sincere apologies for the treatment you received last winter. What happened to you was inexcusable, a shameful episode driven by fear and ignorance. The apology was unexpected, and Della found herself momentarily speechless. Wilcox continued earnestly. The town council has officially acknowledged the wrongdoing against you. We've established a fund to compensate you for your lost property and suffering, though we know no amount can truly make amends. Why now? Della asked, finding her voice. Because it's the right thing to do, Wilcox replied simply. And because your reputation as a healer has spread. Fort Worth has suffered without your skills, particularly through this past winter. Wade's arm slipped protectively around Della's waist. You're asking her to return. No, Wilcox shook his head quickly. We would never presume. Rather, I'm extending an invitation for you and your family to visit Fort Worth as honored guests, should you ever wish to do so. The doors that were closed to you are now open. Della looked down at William, sleeping peacefully in his basket despite the conversation around him. Then she looked up at Wade, whose expression told her the decision was entirely hers. Thank you for coming all this way, Mayor Wilcox, she said finally. Your apology is accepted and your invitation is appreciated. Perhaps someday we will visit. She paused, then added firmly, but Circle I is our home now. This is where we belong. Wilcox nodded, understanding. Of course, the invitation remains open, as does our regret for past wrongs. He reached into his coat and produced an envelope. This contains the deed to your grandmother's house and property, which the town has held in trust. It's rightfully yours to do with as you see fit. Della accepted the envelope, a small piece of her past returned. Thank you. After Wilcox departed, Wade and Della sat on the porch swing, William nestled between them. What will you do with the property? Wade asked gently. Della considered the question. Sell it, I think. Use the money to expand our business here. She looked around at the thriving ranch, at the horses in the corral, the expanded garden, the comfortable home they had built together. Everything I need is right here. Wade's smile was tender as he leaned in to kiss her. Everything I need, too. 5 years passed, bringing changes and growth to Circle I Ranch. William was joined by a sister, Emma Rose, and then another brother, James Thomas. The ranch expanded its operations, with the Millers eventually becoming partners in the business. Della's remedies were now sold in stores throughout Texas, and Wade's horses were sought after by buyers across the country. They did eventually visit Fort Worth, showing their children the place where their mother's journey had begun. But they always returned to Circle I, to the home built from love and resilience. On winter evenings, they would tell their children the story how the town drove their mother into the snow with nowhere to go, and how a cowboy had said they wouldn't find her at his ranch. The children loved this tale above all others, especially the part where their parents fell in love amidst the horses and healing herbs. Was it scary, Mama? Emma would ask, her eyes wide. When they made you leave, it was, Della would admit. But sometimes the scariest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations, Wade would always add. And sometimes what looks like an ending is really just a beginning. Sitting by the fire with their children around them and years of happiness behind them, Della and Wade would exchange a look that said more than words ever could, a look of gratitude for the storm that had brought them together, and the love that had turned two broken souls into a family complete.